So Deadpool 2 is out, which means it's officially now, if you've seen the movie, part of the X-Men continuity. Now where exactly in the continuity it's placed, well, that's really up to debate, but we can try to figure it out with an updated XMen Timeline. So the previous timeline was something like this, probably. Anyways, let's just go over the quick basics. The main X-Men timeline now that we are currently following is of course the one that includes X-Men Apocalypse. That movie is of course a sequel to Days of Future Past. But keep in mind that Apocalypse takes place in the 80s. The first Deadpool takes place in modern day. Logan takes place in the far future. The Gifted and Legion, the two TV series, exist. We don't know where though, or in which timeline. Anyways, here is the timeline that pretty much everybody agrees is the default one. Everything starts with X-Men First Class. The timeline then from there diverges into two different timelines. The top one goes to X-Men Origins Wolverine, which leads to X-Men 1, X-Men 2, X-Men 3, The Wolverine, and then Days of Future Past. Due to messing with timelines and going back in time, the Days of Future Past then jumps into the second timeline, which officially means that that timeline consists of X-Men First Class, Days of Future Past, X-Men Apocalypse, which then leads to Deadpool, The Gifted is somewhere in there, and then which leads to Logan. Logan pretty much has to be in this bottom timeline, because, well, it can't take place in the Days of Future Past timeline, the original one that ends with that, because everything was scrapped after it, and the future isn't as messed up. So, there you go. So naturally, Deadpool 2 has to be a sequel to the first Deadpool. And of course, if you watch Deadpool 2, you undoubtedly know that the original X-Men from this timeline, the young version of the characters, all appear, including James McAvoy as Charles Xavier. So for the purpose of this video, we're just going to stick with one timeline. Everything starts with X-Men First Class. And then from here on out, things can get a little bit interesting. X-Men Origins Wolverine is clearly mentioned by actually showing that it does happen in Deadpool 2. So let's just put that one on the bottom while we go to the top timeline and just say that obviously the sequel to First Class is Days of Future Past. After that, we make the natural progression to the next movie in the series, X-Men Apocalypse, because it's a direct sequel, so nothing confusing yet. After that, we know we're getting Dark Phoenix, so just, pretend that's there. And then we go back to the timeline, so Dark Phoenix is set in the 90s, so the natural next step is to jump to Deadpool, which takes place sometime after the year 2010. We're just gonna put Deadpool 2 right next to it, because it's a direct sequel, and of course I'm just gonna toss a Gifted on the bottom there, because it may or may not be a part of this continuity. We don't really know till they make a direct reference to the events of the movies in the actual series. And then just giving you the scope of the full timeline, because the last movie in the series is of course Logan, because that's the furthest down. This is sort of what the timeline is going to look like. Mainly because you of course have that full cameo of all the X-Men that are currently in their own series that appear in Deadpool 2 during the X-Mansion scene. It kind of confirms, yeah, he's in this continuity, he's just doing his own thing. So there we go, that's the X-Men timeline updated without including the original. Because we don't need to, because that would just be too much right now. This is the only timeline we care about.